Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I had a little conversation get started, which I'm going to kind of flip in here for you guys in my other video, trying to explain to guys about strength standards for programs. People are arguing there and saying, no, strength relative to weight is the way things have always been measured. That's how this works. And someone else is saying, yeah, I mean, it doesn't really make sense that two guys who squat 315, that they should run the same program if one of them weighs 150 and one weighs 250. I'm going to get into that here because actually I disagree. I can give you guys a perfect textbook example of when they should be running the same program because it is about absolute strength. So let me put on my +5 out of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about that. All right, guys, I don't know how else to say this. It's like you say this 2 or 3 different ways and people still don't get it. Your strength standards, we're talking not about strength standards of how you rank in a powerlifting meet. All right, that's great. They actually break these down into like 6 or 7 categories in most powerlifting federations relative to your body weight. You know, all your lifts, your totals and everything. But this is not what we should be doing for novice, intermediate, and advanced. Your status on that scale is not a dick measuring contest. All right, it is not a comparison of who's the best power lifter. That's what Wilks scores and stuff are for, all right, which are relative to strength. You can go plug in a Wilks calculator. You don't even need categories. You can just run it through a calculator and tell who's the better power lifter in terms of relative strength. You don't need that to know what sort of program any type of athlete, someone even who just wants to gain muscle, who's not even competing in anything. You don't use that standard to determine how advanced they are in their ability to make progress and recover from their relative work capacity. This is not a dick measuring contest. In fact, I'm going to say that the higher you go on the scale, the more it sucks for you. It's shitty to not be a novice anymore. If you like making novice gains and running novice programs, it fucking sucks to be intermediate. It's not a bragging right, it's shitty. You don't want to know it's even worse? Being an advanced lifter, knowing that you're going to have to bust your ass for a year and a half to put 10 pounds on your squat is pretty fucking shitty. Right? That's not a bragging right thing. This is meaning you're trying to determine what sort of training program you need to run. And I'm going to give you an example. Someone said that right there, and you know what popped in my head? Because we're talking about my novice program when you finish my novice program and you're ready for an intermediate program. That's what this whole conversation is about, right? Let me ask you guys a question. Do you guys think that 2 guys who squat 315, one who weighs 150 and one that weighs 250 pounds, should be running a similar program or even the same program? I'm going to say yes. Yes, they should. I don't care how you want to classify them on whatever chart. With one of them squatting double his body weight and one squatting, less than 1.5 times his body weight. Doesn't matter. It's still about relative strength and your ability to beat up your body with the amount of tonnage that you can move. All right, perfect example. Let's say both these guys were training partners. Let's say they were training partners and they started working out together. Let's say the 150-pound guy is maybe slightly shorter. He's 5'6". All right, slightly shorter guy, not super short, but a little on the short side. And he started at 140 pounds. He goes on the program, puts on 12 pounds muscle, loses 2 pounds of fat, ends up 150. Probably a really lean 150 at that point because he's a thinner guy. And he's now squatting 315 pounds. Let's say the 250-pound guy started at 270. And he slowly did a cut while working out with the other guy. All right, let's say he's still really fat because 250, he probably is fat. Let's be honest. If you only squat 315 at 250 pounds, you're probably really fat. Anyone going to argue with that? Anyone disagree there? So because he weighs 250, has nothing to do with his level of experience. He probably has about the same muscle the 150-pound guy has. Maybe a little more frame, but he's moving the weight a further distance. He's just a lot fatter. Because again, a 315 max squat for a 250-pound person means you're fat. You're not really well on the body composition, or you'd probably be squatting a lot more than 315. All right, weighing 250, I don't think even an average genetic person should be anything under a 400-pound squat. They should probably be closer to 500-pound squat raw. So he's obviously just very fat. So why wouldn't he run the same program as the other guy? They have the same amount of strength. All right, they have the same amount of absolute strength. People get so hung up in relative strength. Relative strength really is really a big deal and is really an ideal measurement for really lean guys. Guys who aren't really lean, relative strength doesn't always swing in their favor very well. So, and this has nothing to do with their ability to train. They're both at roughly the same experience level. They train together, have run the same program, have the same amount of strength, probably have pretty close amounts of lean body mass relative to their frame. In what scenario would these guys not run the same program? They've been working out together and had the same strength. Does it matter that one's 100 pounds heavier than the other? I think because if they had run similar programs to get to that strength level, they should probably continue to train together and run the same program together. They might be ready to go on to an intermediate program. If one of them says, hey, let's keep training together, I'm ready to do Mad Cows 5x5, we're done with Jason's program. Okay, we can squat 315, we're not repping it, but we're hitting it for a max. Let's move on to an intermediate program. Is anyone realistically going to say that the fat guy squatting 315 shouldn't go ahead and do the intermediate program with the skinny guy squatting 315? Does anyone really think he shouldn't run the same program with him? They have the same amount of strength. I think they'll progress similarly on the other program. In fact, the fat guy can keep cutting, the skinny guy can keep bulking, and they'll probably do really well together. They're probably going to work with pretty similar weights. I think they would both do just fine running the exact same program together. They could both go on to an intermediate program. Does it matter that if you used one of those charts that the fatter guy isn't an intermediate yet because he has too much body fat? But if he lost 50 pounds of body fat, it was liposuctioned off of him overnight, he would suddenly become an intermediate? Is that how people think this works? That's not how it works. You think the strong for his size, 150-pound guy, who's also only been running a novice program, do you think that he should run a different program because the chart says he's advanced? No, I think they will both do just fine on Mad Cows 5x5. Why? Because they're both squatting 315 pounds. I think it's perfectly acceptable for them to drop my novice program and go on to Mad Cows, and I think they could run it together just fine. Again, people don't understand that relative strength is useful for defining your ability as a lifter. It's useful for defining where you stand in a competitive environment. That's what it's useful for. Using your relative body weight compared to your overall strength isn't useful for determining what sort of program you need to run, because the way that your programs are going to work, they're going to be how much workload can you beat your body up with every set? How much tonnage can you generate per minute of your workout? All right, and that comes down to your absolute strength. That's the most important factor. That's your most important factor. And I have noted in the past, having trained with a very serious level power lifter who weighed 146, that the workloads that he used in a workout, he could handle a lot more volume than you would think had you based it upon his size. All right, hey, you just look at the weights that he moved and tried to do it in that percentage of his body mass that everyone wants to do to put everyone in advanced category. He could move insane tonnages of work and do just fine. He did fine without drugs. But his lifts were all elite level lifts because of his body weight, because the guy could deadlift just over 500 pounds weighing 146. That's pretty impressive. Guy could squat. I don't remember what he was squatting, but I want to say, 350 pounds or so while weighing 146. But he had no problem doing fairly high volume training still, even though his lifts were advanced, because in terms of relative strength, he could handle the same volumes that 200-pound guys I knew could use with the similar weights. He had no trouble doing that because he, maybe it was very high weights relative to his body weight, but he's also moving the weight a shorter distance, so he's doing less total work. It's still less beating up of his body, even though he has a smaller frame. What people need to look at these things at, I set these strength standards, and I don't set them based on body weight because that's not relevant really to when you finish the program. It really isn't, guys. Absolute strength, I think, is a better way to define whether you're a novice, an intermediate, and an advanced lifter, because that's still the amount of abuse that you're subjecting your body to in any given workout. It's the total tonnage that you're going to move, the total intensity that you're going to utilize, the actual weight on the bar that you're utilizing, that I think impedes recovery the most. That's what beats your body up the most, not your rate of perceived exertion. And that's just my observation from over the years. So no, I don't think for determining your programs, people should be factoring in their body weight as a major factor. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.